رفيق الرضيع نازح في الشاطئ والوضع صعب ومش قادرين نحكي، ما فيش مصاري، ما فيش اكل، والله العظيم اللي 7 ايام 8 ايام نفسي اشوف الطحين. اليوم رحت لميت شويه خشب وبعت جبت نص كيلو والله العظيم.
بستنى ابني يجيب لي كيس طحين. الله اكبر. كل الشعب اكل، بس احنا بدنا اكل بالامان. خطيئوا لازم برقابكم.
يعني انت اليوم انت بعت ابنك وعارف انه المنطقه خطر اللي رايح يجيب منها طحين.
عمره 15 سنه بده يجيب لي ويجيب لاخوه. احنا صاحبين عيال، والله ما عندنا حبه طحين، ما عندنا اشي. انا مبسوطه اللي الشعب كله ياكل، بس بدنا اياه بامان يعني، وبدنا نوقف اطلاق نار عشان نروع على بيوتنا بالامان.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. Today is the 29th of July, 2025. And when you watch such footage coming from the Gaza Strip or anywhere from around the world, this just awakens lots of feelings deep inside you, and you want to do something about it. What can we do about it? This is the serious question that the Palestinians nowadays are being smashed under the feet of the Israeli soldiers. There are atomic-sized bombs being dropped over them. And then some countries come and say that they're going to help the Palestinians, and they drop some food. It's like a dystopian nightmare. It's like a test field. It's like normalizing everything and anything that our humanity doesn't accept, right? Unfortunately speaking, I'm not one of the optimistic people about the region. And I'm not one of those people who will tell you that create fancy thumbnails and tell you that everything is all right and the US empire is retreating, and share with you some. I truly don't know what to say. I'm watching some of the analysis of some people, especially in the alternative media, and it is mind-boggling what I'm hearing about the inevitability of the American decay and the decline of the empire in the region. I think these people are either living in a parallel universe or they are selling illusions to the people, whether knowingly or unknowingly, to generate views. On this channel, we're not going to do that. We're going to tell you the hard facts and the hard truths about the dire situation, because if we don't address the dire situation, then there is no way to address these issues and fix them. Before I start today's live streaming, I would like to thank you all guys for joining to today's stream, whether on YouTube, on Rumble, and on Ganjin World. And I would like to thank our friend Red Access for moderating this live chat. Always, he's doing an amazing job by moderating the chat in order to create a healthy environment for everyone to come and have a respectful and civilized conversation. I'm not asking you guys to agree with me. Please criticize my opinions as much as you like and as much as you want and as much as it can bring value to this channel. This is the purpose of this channel. And I would like to say that YouTube has contacted me on X. The YouTube team profile account on YouTube contacted me, and they asked me for further context about my complaint because I made a complaint on X saying that this employee, the woman from YouTube, she knows nothing about nothing. You remember yesterday's stream? And she told me with raising a finger that this is the last decision. They will not lift the warning on my channel. And she even threatened me with demonetization. And she even asked me that if you're not sure that a post or a video could violate our community guidelines, then don't post. I have never seen such an unprofessional employee basically talking to someone who's creating content on the platform with over 100,000 subscribers. She even talked about my mood. Like she told me, I have the feeling that you're not in a good mood. What? Leave my mood alone. We're talking about my channel. This is a big investment I did, and I'm creating content here for educational purposes. I'm not here to radicalize anyone. I'm not here to tell you how to think. I'm here to share my subjective opinion. I am subjective. I have strong opinions. I'm sharing them here for the people either agree or disagree, right? And today's episode, which is about Egypt and the Muslim Brotherhood, is my personal, subjective, biased opinion. Can I be more transparent with you? This is my personal, subjective, and biased opinion. And I am biased against the Muslim Brotherhood in the region. I will never forget what they have done to my country. I'm not here to be a professor and give theories and lectures and tell the people like, oh, I'm in the middle. I'm just telling you, historical facts. Yes, I'm giving you historical facts, but I'm building opinions based on this historical context. And I'm building my opinions in order to, the intention here is to create a region which is peaceful and the people can coexist together. And I believe forces like the Muslim Brotherhood are polarizing the region, and they are regressive, and they are not progressive at all, and they will keep the region backwards. And this doesn't mean at all that the current regimes, whether the former Assad government or the current Sisi government, are saints, and it doesn't mean that they were progressive to my likes. I always had the feeling that I'm ahead in my progressivism when it comes to personal freedoms, social freedoms, political expressions, freedom of media, etc., always ahead of the former regime in Syria and the current one in Egypt. So I'm not downplaying the authoritarian nature, but the political authoritarian nature of these regimes. And I think that they share a big responsibility for the current situation, which the forces of the Muslim Brotherhood are capitalizing on in order to build new regimes, but not better ones, even worse ones. This is the premise of today's episode, live streaming. I have done a lot of research today for you guys. I hope you are ready for today's episode. And this is going to be about the history of Egypt and the history of the Muslim Brotherhood. And last time, this was in 2019, I believe. No, this was in 2020. I made series of videos about the Muslim Brotherhood. And 2 weeks later, I saw myself on Al Jazeera in one of their documentaries. They included me in one of their documentaries called, the title of the documentary is Assad's Assassins in Europe. So I know how dangerous it is to address the Muslim Brotherhood because they have a huge network of activists, NGOs, politicians in political parties in the UK, in Germany, and in elsewhere. And they have big lobby represented by Qatar and Turkey influencing public opinion and media outlets to smear the people who speak ill about the Muslim Brotherhood. So I know the risks, but today what I'm going to really try to do is to address the historical foundation of this organization and where we have ended up in Syria because of the Muslim Brotherhood, and how the situation could be in Egypt if there is a regime change. Right? This is important. So let's rewind to Egypt, guys, to 1928. In the dusty canal town of Ismailia, under the watchful eye of British colonial authorities, a young school teacher named Hassan al-Banna launched what would become a highly influential and deeply polarizing movement, the Muslim Brotherhood. At face value, it started as a religious and social group, preaching piety and offering charity. But it didn't take long for the Brotherhood to evolve into a political force with a far-reaching agenda to re-establish Islam not just as a personal faith, but as a complete system of life, controlling the social, legal, economic, and political fabric of society. Al-Banna made it clear. He said, quote, Islam is a faith, a worship, a nation, and a nationality, a religion, and a state. In other words, there would be no division between mosque and parliament, between private belief and state law. And while that may have sounded like spiritual revival, it also laid the groundwork for religious authoritarianism under the banner of morality. Now, the Brotherhood didn't rise in a vacuum. Al-Banna saw Western influence, especially British imperialism and secular reforms in places like Turkey, as a civilizational threat. But what is curious is that despite his intense opposition to colonialism, there is an old and unresolved claim that British-linked banks or institutions may have helped him at the start. So let's talk about that. There is a lingering allegation that the Suez Canal Company, the name of the company is the Suez Canal Company, which was heavily controlled by British and French interests, provided financial support to Al-Banna in those early days in 1928. The logic behind it that the British may have seen the Brotherhood as a useful tool to undercut Egypt's secular, nationalist, and leftist forces movements like the Al-Wafd Party, which back then posed a direct challenge to colonial control. So was it a small grant, a political favor, just a coincidence? We don't know for sure. But it raises uncomfortable questions about the Muslim Brotherhood. Could the Brotherhood have emerged not as a pure resistance movement, but as a convenient religious buffer, tolerated, maybe even nudged by imperial interests to fragment Egyptian politics? The answer is very ambiguous, and it's still haunting them till the recent days. Fast forward to 1952. As you may know, guys, the Free Officers, a group of nationalist army officers, overthrew King Farouk and abolished the monarchy back then. Among them was Jamal Abdel Nasser. For a brief moment, the Brotherhood and the Free Officers were aligned. Both opposed British power, both wanted to end corruption, but it didn't take long before deep ideological fault lines split them apart. The Brotherhood wanted an Islamic state. Nasser wanted a secular Arab nationalist republic. The Brotherhood had a massive grassroots network, which Nasser saw them as a threat, not as a partner. By 1954, the regime of Nasser cracked down hard. The Muslim Brotherhood was outlawed, its members arrested, even executed, or exiled. So the group went underground. And here is where the allegations of foreign backing were turned into political weapons. Nasser's government, for example, accused the Brotherhood of being hypocrites, claiming to oppose imperialism but allegedly benefiting from it at birth. State propaganda of Nasser painted them as agents of MI6, tools of British intrigue, or at the very least, opportunists who would take help from any hand that fed their mission. Whether or not those accusations were true, they stuck and they were useful. Nasser's media machine hammered, for example, one of these messages. They said, quote, "These men went to take Egypt back. No, these men want to take Egypt backward, and they were supported by the very empire we fought to expel." It worked because the Brotherhood was born in a British company town. Al-Banna did have connections with local elites, some of whom had ties to the Suez Canal Company. The idea of an Islamic revival as a colonial project, whether real or exaggerated, was powerful propaganda in the post-colonial Arab imagination. And Nasser didn't stop there. He accused the Brotherhood of plotting assassinations and collaborating with foreign intelligence. And after the failed assassination attempt on Nasser in 1954, the Brotherhood was blamed. Whether they did it or not, it gave Nasser the justification he needed to crush them. In schools and newspapers in Egypt, Brotherhood figures were portrayed as fanatics, traitors, and foreign tools. Even Hassan al-Banna's legacy was rewritten, erased from textbooks, or painted as dangerous extremists cloaked in religious garb. Now, let's talk about a second personality in Muslim Brotherhood. His name is Sayyid Qutb. Originally, Qutb was a literary critic and secular intellectual. Sayyid Qutb returned from a trip to the United States in the late 1940s, deeply disillusioned by what he saw as Western materialism, moral decay, and cultural arrogance. He joined the Brotherhood, and after enduring prison and torture under Nasser, he radicalized dramatically. Qutb's new vision declared that most of the Muslim world was living in Arabic we call Jahiliyyah. Jahiliyyah means a state of pre-Islamic ignorance. Qutb believed that even Muslim majority societies had abandoned true Islam, and therefore violent jihad was a legitimate tool to overthrow secular regimes and restore Islamic rule. His writings, especially Milestones and In the Shade of the Quran, became doctrinal texts for a new generation of radical Islamists. But Qutb's worldview was not only revolutionary, it was deeply sectarian. Now, see the language and compare it to what the minions of Jolani say and speak about the minorities in Syria. Qutb openly denounced minority Muslim sects like the Druze. YouTube always, when you turn on the caption, it says Jews. It's not Jews, it's Druze, Druze. So he denounced minority Muslim sects like the Druze, Alawites, and Shia as heretical deviations from Islam. To Sayyid Qutb, these communities were not simply theologically different, they were obstacles to the Islamic order, and in some interpretations, legitimate targets in a broader ideological war. This narrow, exclusionary doctrine profoundly influenced the future of Islamist extremism. It was Qutb, not al-Banna, who became the ideological father or godfather to figures like Ayman al-Zawahiri. And Ayman al-Zawahiri later given us Osama bin Laden, shaping the foundations of Al-Qaeda and the broader global jihadist movement. And remember, Jolani has vowed allegiance to Ayman al-Zawahiri. In essence, Qutb transformed the Brotherhood's mission from one of moral reform and social activism into a blueprint for confrontation, insurrection, and sectarian conflict. So where does this leave us now? The story of the Muslim Brotherhood isn't a simple tale of pity versus power. It is a murky mix of religious ambition for an entanglement, ideological radicalism, and political opportunism. Did they offer hope to disenfranchised Egyptians? Yes. Did they challenge colonialism and corruption? Absolutely. But did they also create the ideological breeding ground for extremist thought and open the door for sectarian violence and global jihadism? History suggests yes, they did. And that's why the legacy of the Brotherhood remains so dangerously ambiguous, not just in Egypt, but across the Muslim world. So this is the historical, I don't want to call it a lecture, to be honest with you, but the history which I wanted to tell you about the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, this was the era between 1928 to, let's say, after the death of Jamal Abdel Nasser. We had Sadat succeeding him, and Sadat and Hafiz al-Assad, they were both as leaders of a republic, right? And they had also similar sentiments and opinions about the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, Anwar Sadat, after 1973 war, he chose the path of negotiations and normalization of relations with Israel. Now, during this time, there was a huge campaign against Sadat, not only by the Muslim Brothers, but also the Arab nationalists and pan-Arabists in the region, one of whom was Hafiz al-Assad, calling him a traitor. Now, between 1973 and 1978, which was the year Egypt signing the normalization deal with Israel, under the name of the Camp David Accords, during this time, Jimmy Carter, the former late president of the United States, who has, remember, this is coming later, but Carter was the person who authorized the CIA to arm the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. But he was also the person who sponsored this peace agreement or the normalization deal between Egypt and Israel. Jimmy Carter had good, let's say, working relationship with Hafiz al-Assad, the former president or former late president of Syria. And he tried to persuade and convince Hafiz al-Assad to join this normalization deal alongside Egypt. Now, Syria picked a completely different path. They have chosen confrontation, not only with Israel, but also with Egypt. Now, the confrontation with Egypt was more, let's say, rhetorical. They have kicked them out from the Arab League. They changed the headquarters of the Arab League from Cairo. I think they took it to Tunisia, if I'm not mistaken, or to Baghdad. Please, somebody correct me in the comments. Hafiz al-Assad, however, because Egypt left the Arab-Israeli conflict by normalizing ties with Israel, so there is no longer direct military confrontation between the both sides, Syria saw itself isolated and alone in the region without the backing of a strong Arab army like Egypt. And this was the time two very important things happened in 1979. So this is 1 year after Egypt signed the deal with Israel. One, the insurgency of the Muslim Brotherhood started against Syria, which in my opinion, this was not a coincidence at all, because I will give you a few indications. One of the major backers of the Muslim Brotherhood insurgency in Syria was Saddam Hussein. And Saddam Hussein back then was an asset for the US. At the beginning, he was an asset for the US. And the Americans supported him against Iran. They supported all sides, let's say, the Americans back then, but they supported Saddam Hussein against Iran. They wanted for both sides to destroy each other, two strong, capable countries, which can become regional powers. So they brought both sides into a long conflict. Saddam Hussein, despite being involved in being now coming into power recently, he supported the Muslim Brotherhood in Syria against Hafiz al-Assad. And in my opinion, again, this is my subjective opinion, this was no coincidence. They wanted to exert pressure on Hafiz al-Assad by igniting an Islamist sectarian insurgency against his secular regime via the Muslim Brotherhood. And what the Muslim Brotherhood did, basically, for those who lived that era or read books, they know that the Muslim Brotherhood were not, they were executing the Alawite members of the military and the Ba'ath Party, one of which is the massacre of the Aleppo military school. You can also Google that and check yourself that there was a big massacre against Alawite cadets in the Aleppo military school. And the Muslim Brotherhood continued this type of terrorist attacks and executions for a few months until the regime reacted in a very harsh way against them. And the Muslim Brotherhood declared an Islamic Emirate in Hama back then, just like they did now in Idlib, in Hama, in Homs, in different places in Syria. But this was back then, in 79, between 79 and 82. So they received support from an American asset, Saddam Hussein. The media office of the Muslim Brotherhood was in Bonn, in Germany. They were circling their Muslim Brotherhood propaganda from here, from Germany. Is it a coincidence? I don't think so. So in order to exert pressure on Hafiz to join this normalization deal, but Hafiz crushed this Muslim Brotherhood insurgency in Hama. Now, the narrative, the mainstream narrative is, if you go and Google this, they will say there was this Hama massacre, and that Hafiz al-Assad killed Sunni civilians with thousands of them. Now, the truth of the matter is there was an insurgency, there was an infighting. And the CIA, they had assets in Hama, and they have submitted a policy evaluation of the situation in Hama to their superiors in the CIA. And this document later has been declassified, and we learned from the CIA sources that the number of the casualties in Hama was around 5,000. Among them was 1/3 from the Syrian army soldiers, 1/3 from the Muslim Brotherhood militants, and 1/3 from the civilians. So around 1,500 civilians, around 1,500 Syrian army soldiers, around 1,500 Muslim Brotherhood militants. Now, if you listen to the Muslim Brotherhood sources, or if you turn on your Al Jazeera, they will say the number of the casualties were 20,000, 40,000. Now they say it's 60,000. Those are all exaggerations. They never happened. But they have used this propaganda from the 80s to reignite a new sectarian insurgency in 2011 against Bashar. And it worked. It worked perfectly. So we had this Muslim Brotherhood being instrumentalized, basically, in order to force Hafiz to sign a deal with Israel. This is my opinion. Now, fast forward between 82 to 2011, there was no much of, let's say, Muslim Brotherhood attempts against the Assad government or the Assad regime. But 2011 was, in my opinion, was a turning point in the region. The so-called Arab Spring started, right? Now, some people argue and say the entire thing was a plot, it was a conspiracy against the region. To be honest, I cannot prove that. But what I can prove is the Democratic Party back then, by Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, they have definitely shaped the outcome of the Arab Spring, especially in Tunisia, where they brought the Muslim Brotherhood into power. They shaped the outcome in Libya by direct intervention and brought Muslim Brotherhood types into power, and then they had two governments. And they did the same thing in Egypt, bringing Muslim Brotherhood to power. Hillary Clinton went and she congratulated Morsi back then, right? So the attempt started at the same year in Syria in 2011 by the Muslim Brotherhood forces. They were the driving force. They are the most organized political party in the shadows in the Arab world. And the Muslim Brotherhood will always be strong in the Islamic world, because people need to understand that Islam is not like Christianity. Islam is not a religion, only spiritual religion between you and God. Like Sayyid Qutb said several times, like Hassan Banna said several times, Islam is a religion of state. It's your personal religion, and it's the religion of the state. Every Muslim, in their eyes, they have to aspire for an Islamic state. That's the religion of Islam. You cannot be a Muslim if you're not struggling or trying to establish an Islamic state, according to the Muslim Brotherhood ideology. So in any, let's say, democratic environment, when you organize elections, and elections are not democracy, right? The elections, democracy is more than elections. Because if you hold elections, free and fair elections, and you come to power through democratic means, but then you oppress and suppress your populations and consider them second-class citizens like the Shias, the Alawites, the Druze, the Christians, in the own teachings and words of Sayyid Qutb, then you're not a democrat, you're not establishing a democratic regime. You're only using democracy as a train. You get into the train, you go into your destination, and once you arrive there, you jump out. And this is what I believe the Muslim Brotherhood is about. So who say Islam is not compatible with democracy are right. So it's like saying communism is compatible with capitalism. And I'm not saying that democracy is better than Islamic State. And I'm not saying Islamic State is worse. I'm not attacking anyone here, right? All I'm saying is it's ridiculous to assume that democracy and Islam are the same, or they can coexist together without struggles. It's impossible. It's completely different. Islam is a vertical political system. The instructions comes from God downwards, and democracy is the rule of the people, and you go up. It's completely opposite. This is my opinion. So in this case, I want to give you an example happened when Morsi came to power, right? And because I spoke about this case on X, I received a huge backlash by some people, but many Egyptians agreed with me. This is a very polarizing issue. They always say now that Sisi is a collaborator and agent of the West and this and that. And I'm not arguing with or against that. I don't think that Sisi is an agent. But I also don't think that Sisi is a revolutionary leader, right? However, the people who think binary, they want to be, they always say Morsi was better than Sisi, and that's not the case. Morsi, they say that he opened the borders with Gaza. Yes, he did. But the reason for it is he kept the borders for some time open with Gaza because Hamas, in one way or another, is also Muslim Brotherhood group, right? And it's the ideological extension of the ruler in Egypt. That's the reason why they did. So the question here then should be, what did Morsi do to give a tangible support for the Palestinians to receive their freedom? Has he done anything in that regard? To my knowledge and to my memory, he declared jihad against Syria. He sent hundreds of Egyptians and hundreds of Palestinians to come to Syria and fight against the Syrian regime because it's an infidel secular Alawite regime. This is what they said, right? So people come and tell me nowadays, what did you expect from Morsi to do, to declare a war against Israel? No, I didn't expect that, and I don't want to ignite wars. I'm not calling for wars in the region. All I'm saying is I'm showcasing you the hypocrisy and the facade behind this ideology, which says jihad is a duty But this duty and this jihad only happens against other Arab countries. So if you are perfectly capable of declaring jihad against Syria, you were capable of declaring jihad for Palestine, right? But he didn't do that. Why? What was the reason for it? I'm not calling for jihad, right? I'm just explaining to you these double standards. Now, Morsi was removed after 1 year. Now, the people say the Americans have removed him. In my opinion, here, what happened in the region after the Arab Spring, between 2011 and 2012, 2013, there was a consensus among the Saudis and the Qataris to knock out some of these regimes and establish new ones. That's why, if you remember, in 2011 and 2012, even the Emirates, they were supportive of even the Muslim Brotherhood opposition in Syria, and they have given them their salaries. Even the UAE, which today presents itself as this anti-Muslim Brotherhood force in the region, they have given support to these Islamist forces in Syria, and they have paid the salaries of some of the opposition figures. The rift and the split started between Saudi Arabia and the UAE on one hand and Qatar on the other hand, when Qatar managed to bring the Muslim Brotherhood forces into power in Tunisia, Egypt, and they tried to do the same, Libya, and tried to do the same thing in Syria, and keep all the credit and all the influence and leverage in these countries for itself. That's where this rift started. And if you remember, then in 2013, around 2013, Saudi Arabia and Qatar had a big rift, and even Saudis have imposed a siege on Qatar. This was the reason. So I don't believe for a second now that the Saudis were completely against the Muslim Brotherhood. And see what happened now in Syria after 2011 when Jolani came to power. What did they do? Did they say we don't accept these Salafi Takfiri Muslim Brotherhood forces? No. They're receiving him like a hero in Saudi Arabia, right? So this would be my major argument against the people who say, no, this is because he was too anti-Israeli. He was never an anti-Israeli, Morsi. He was a very convenient pawn in the region to bring these Muslim Brotherhood forces together and create a regional system, replace the old corrupted, rotten regimes with new ones who are also controlled opposition. So the current regimes were definitely not, let's say, progressive revolutionary regimes, but the ones being replaced are also controlled opposition. And what the Americans under the Democratic Party tried to do in the region is to create a network of alliances, countries aligned among themselves ideologically, and this bond that combines them is the Muslim Brotherhood ideology. And because Qatar owns the money, and Qatar is the strongest backer and supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood in the region, then through the petrodollar of Qatar and its very strong propaganda machine, Al Jazeera, they can create a new regional order whose decision-making they can influence the decision-making through Qatar. And the evidence for it is when the former foreign minister Hamad bin Jassim was on a Qatari national TV, he used these terminologies. He said, we were tasked by the United States in 2011 to lead the file of Syria. They were tasked. Why would they be tasked by the United States? Because they wanted to create a new regional order whose decision-making could be influenced through this petrodollar of Qatar. And that's why Qatar has invested so much in this Arab Spring thing and wanted to spread democracy in the Arab world. Are you out of your mind? Is there anyone with two functioning brain cells who believes that Qatar is supporting democracy in the region? Or Al Jazeera supports democracy in the region or democratic movements? Qatar itself is a family rule. Have you seen Al Jazeera once speaking about the Qatari regime or criticizing the Qatari regime or calling for democratic reforms in Qatar? Then this means this is a political weapon in the hands of Qatar. It's a PSYOP operation against the rest of the population in the region, but not against itself. Right? So in this case, I truly think that the Arab Spring, this trend of we want to have revolutions and destroy all these countries and restart building new regimes in order to create a new regional order, bringing controlled opposition into powers. Now, in Syria, this was the last domino in this Arab Spring. They have succeeded and brought the Muslim Brotherhood forces aligned with Jolani to power. And in this case, it seems that this is going to be, again, encourage the Muslim Brotherhood in other regions and now in Egypt. So once we are done with Syria, this will definitely will reflect on Egypt. And I have written an article about this case on Substack. For those who want to, who don't have a time, guys, to listen to all this I'm doing on Syriana Analysis as a, video podcast or commentary. I'm also trying to summarize some of these podcasts on Substack and then publishing them as articles. So I said, let's talk honestly and yes, bluntly about the Muslim Brotherhood and the broader regional game that is unfolding around them. People keep asking, is the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization? My answer is yes, undoubtedly. But at the same time, we can't ignore that they have been instrumental in various movements throughout the region, especially in the aftermath of the so-called Arab Spring. They have been used, and let's not mince words, by global and regional powers alike as tools of influence, especially by Qatar and Turkey. The last real domino of the Arab Spring was Syria, and once that domino fell, a whole new phase began. Now we are watching a new narrative unfold around Egypt, specifically around Gaza. People are throwing accusations left and right. They say Egypt is strangling Gaza, Egypt is sealing the Rafah crossing. Sure. But have you looked at the map recently? Israel controls the Rafah crossing from the Palestinian side. So even if Egypt opens the gates and pours aid in, it is Israel that sets the actual limit. So let's be very clear here. The blockade is enforced with Israeli boots. But what is really going on is deeper than border logistics. Egypt is under immense pressure because the only remaining strong army in the region is the Egyptian army. That's it. Everyone else has been either dismantled, neutralized, or turned into proxy forces for someone else's agenda. We can critique Sisi as much as we want, guys, and I will join you. But let's not throw out strategic reality while we are at it. The Egyptian military is the last major obstacle to the Israeli expansionist plan in the Sinai, aka the Greater Israel Project. And what's the easiest way to neutralize the last obstacle? Civil war, internal chaos, destabilization from within. And here the Muslim Brotherhood enters the room. Again, we've seen this movie before. The Muslim Brotherhood is already being positioned to ignite unrest. Al Jazeera, for example, is running Egypt-focused coverage 24/7, painting Egypt as the villain starving the Palestinian people. The propaganda by Al Jazeera is relentless. And on the ground, we see performative activism that borders on satire. People tossing rice and other types of food, they're putting this tossing rice cans into the Mediterranean and as if they will float to Gaza. This is an NGO cosplay. It is symbolic warfare designed to sway opinion and destabilize the one Arab country left with military teeth. If the Brotherhood and their backers really want to help Gaza, they know where the fight is. They know the actual path, actually, but no, that's not their priority. The same group that sent hundreds of fighters to Syria, Egyptians, Palestinians, and others, now act as if Palestinians aren't worthy of jihad. As if jihad only applies when it's against other Muslims, against secular Arab regimes. Suddenly, there is no energy for jihad when it comes to facing Israel or defending Gaza. And let me be crystal clear, guys. I'm not calling for jihad against Israel or anyone in the region. I'm simply showing the ideological farce behind these jihadi movements. These Takfiri groups in the region have shown their cards, especially after the so-called Arab Spring. They don't mobilize for oppressed people unless the oppressor is a convenient target, a politically sanctioned enemy, or part of a broader foreign agenda. It's a mercenary ideology dressed up as religion. What we are left now in the region is tens of thousands of fighters in Syria, many of whom now say they are tired of war and want peace. They want peace with Israel. And then what do? They go and attack defenseless minorities. So you have enough energy to fight powerless, but no strength left to challenge actual power, no appetite to confront the real siege around Gaza. This tells you everything about the nature of the game being played. These aren't independent actors. These jihadi groups aren't independent actors moved by moral conviction. They are chess pieces, and someone else is moving them on the chessboard. Now, the real question should be, if Egypt or the Egyptian regime collapses, what comes next? Who fills the vacuum? Do you think it will be democracy? It will be freedom? It will be justice for the Palestinians? Or they will be replaced by the Muslim Brotherhood forces and similar Salafi Takfiri forces like the case in Syria? So it will be chaos, it will be militias, it will be external powers carving up what is left. So yes, criticize Egypt, guys, as much as you want and where it deserves, but don't fall into the trap of thinking weakening Egypt strengthens Gaza. That's the illusion we are being sold. This would be my opinion about this case. Now, I'm not again saying that Sisi is a revolutionary leader, and I hope people will not call this a Sisiist talking point, because that was an Assadist talking point back then, which turned out to be true. But some people, unfortunately, do not really learn from the lessons. Lulu Blue, thank you so much for becoming a member of this group. I really appreciate it. Now, this article which I published, it received backlash, and I'm going to show you one of the commentaries or the backlash on my comment, on my opinion, and I'm going to address it in a respectful manner, because this woman is a respectful person. She's an academic, and she has her own opinion, but I disagree with her, right? So we're keeping this in a very civilized and respectful manner. Najat, she's an academic. She's a PhD in Harvard. She's a journalist working formerly for Al Jazeera, CGTN, TRT, Guardian. So she's a very vocal pro-Palestine voice on X. And she says, to my opinion, which I read it to you now, she says, there are a few contradictory statements you have made here, and I want to address them. There is a huge difference between Ikhwan-fueled internal instability and the genuine sentiments of the Egyptian people. Are you aware of how terrified Egyptians are of their internal security forces and intelligence? They have created a society where you will be disappeared for years. Being killed is viewed as a merciful in comparison if you attempt at organizing protests, let alone even discussing it. It was recently discovered that people as young as 12 have been arrested, and there is a heightened paranoia on the part of internal security, where literally thousands have been disappeared. Egyptians are closely monitored every day. However, Egyptians have also told me that there is a growing sense of anger over Gaza. And for you to solely blame this as fueled by the MB isn't fair. This very argument is used by the Gulf states to unfairly label anyone as a terrorist. Are you also aware that the UAE is using this bullshit Ikhwan pretext to commit a genocide in Sudan, along with starving 25 million people? I despise Takfiris as much as you, considering what they have done to Somalia, but please understand that the Muslim Brotherhood has also become a catchphrase via the GCC as an umbrella term to silence anything and label anyone a terrorist. Context is vital, Kevork. Now, I respect her opinion, but she hasn't shown any contradiction, in my opinion, to start with. And my opinion about the Muslim Brotherhood precedes these allegations from the GCC countries against the Muslim Brotherhood. When they supported the Muslim Brotherhood in 2011 in Syria, I opposed them. So my opinion is not built on the opinion of anyone in GCC, and I don't care what they think about anything, especially when it comes to geopolitical matter. I'm a grown-up person with my personal opinions, and I can form my own opinions. I don't care what the GCC says about the Muslim Brotherhood. So I thanked her for the considerate comment. However, I vehemently disagreed with her. The Muslim Brotherhood didn't emerge in a vacuum. It was founded in the mid-20s with support from the British Empire, precisely to counter nationalist and socialist movements that resisted British occupation. From the very beginning, it served as a convenient ideological weapon against secular resistance. In the 1950s, the Brotherhood was once again weaponized, this time against Jamal Abdel Nasser, especially around the time of the tripartite aggression by the UK, France, and Israel. Fast forward to the 1970s, when Hafez al-Assad refused to sign a Camp David-style deal with Israel after the 1973 war. And what happened? Saddam Hussein, then a Western asset, was encouraged to support the Brotherhood in Syria, triggering a violent insurgency to pressure Hafez into compliance. After that insurgency was crushed and the so-called Islamic Emirate in Hama dismantled, where did the Brotherhood's leadership flee? London, Riyadh, and Berlin. Is that a coincidence? Then in 2008, when Bashar, the son of Hafez, rejected normalization with Israel, the old playbook was dusted off again. The Brotherhood and affiliated Salafist networks were backed by British, American, and regional intelligence services to launch a second insurgency. This time, they succeeded. And who came to power? Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, an asset born from this same machinery, backed by Ikhwan networks. Did Jolani establish a democratic regime? No. He established a brutal authoritarian theocracy with a sectarian foundation. He didn't liberate Syria, he fractured it. So, taking all of this into account, what exactly makes you think regime change in Egypt, where the Brotherhood remains a well-organized, well-funded force, would lead to anything other than civil war and the destruction of the Egyptian army? How many times do we need to watch this play out before we understand the pattern? I don't know, guys, if you're interested in the rest of the conversation. I think only the next two comments I would like to share, because this is intellectually good, like chit for a chat with her. Najat says, where in my response did I advocate for regime change? Name one sentence where I implied this. If you read what I wrote, it is describing what we have witnessed over the past 2 years with respect to Gaza specifically, which is the weaponization of Ikhwan. Do you not see influencers like Amjad Taha telling Europe every other day that an imaginary Ikhwan force is about to take over Europe tomorrow morning? Have you not witnessed the UAE's specific foreign policy agenda in using Ikhwan to spread Islamophobia across the Western world? Even in America, US politicians have brought forward legislation proposing to proscribe Ikhwan as a terrorist organization, yet no one American can tell you how it poses an immediate threat to US national security. Have you noticed the Gulf states working with Israel to weaponize Ikhwan and essentially labeling anyone critical of their conduct in Gaza and Sudan as terrorists? This weaponization is what I stand against. But this is my reply. This is the last one I'm going to show you. I honestly don't understand why you keep bringing up the UAE as if I take cues from people like Amjad Taha to form my opinions. We lived through what the Muslim Brotherhood did to our nation. We didn't read about it. We watched it happen with our own eyes. And for the record, many of those now posing as anti-Brotherhood voices, including Amjad Taha, were on the same side as the Brotherhood during the early years of the insurgency in Syria. When I talk about regime change in Egypt, it is not based on Gulf propaganda or UAE talking points. It is based on what I see with my own eyes on Arabic media, especially Al Jazeera, constantly manufacturing public sentiment to pave the way for a Brotherhood-style insurgency in Egypt. And let's not pretend Qatar's role is subtle. They have proven track record in installing the Brotherhood wherever they can: Libya, Tunisia, Egypt, and of course Syria. Qatar has functioned like a fifth column in the region, working to replace older regimes, not with democratic alternatives, but with Brotherhood-aligned theocracies dressed up as revolutions. And the outcome is clear: political collapse, sectarian warfare, and Israeli expansion. Today is the Euphrates, today is the Nile. And we're still arguing over whether or not this is just a theory. So, by the way, this is Amjad Taha, just for you to know. I blocked him some time ago because I saw his very anti-Palestinian propaganda in a very disgusting manner and justifying the mass killing of the Palestinians. So I couldn't handle his posts, which were shown off on my timeline for some reason. I don't know why. So I blocked him. So this is the person that she says that he's spreading propaganda about the threat of the Muslim Brotherhood in Europe and elsewhere. But I don't listen to him. I don't know what he says. I just blocked him. So if you guys think that this Greater Israel project is a mess, it is not. It is not. And nowadays, for example, Dr. Walid Faris, who was a former advisor for Trump, and he's likely now on the payroll of Israel, he's already talking about now this corridor between the Golan Heights to Sweda, and from Sweda they want to open this corridor. As you see, this is this red line between the Golan Heights to Sweda, and from Sweda they want to open a corridor to the eastern shore of the Euphrates. And he says 3 roads to save Sweda to address the humanitarian crisis. All 3 will have to be protected militarily. Israel via Qunaytira, north of Dar'a to Sweda, this is map 1. 2, Israel via Qunaytira, south of Dar'a to Sweda, map 2. And Jordan road directly to Sweda, map 3. So as you see, they're already talking about opening new roads between the Golan Heights to Sweda, and then from Qunaytira passing through Dar'a to Sweda, and the last one is from Jordan to Sweda. And this is going to be just the first phase in the pursuit for the David's Corridor. And for those who don't know what is David's Corridor, just to show you quickly, David's Corridor, just to show you the map quickly. So this is the map of the David's Corridor, which the Israelis say they want to establish in the region. As you see, they want to open a corridor, the blue one, between the Golan Heights, protected by the Israeli forces, by all the way from the Golan to Sweda to Al Tanf border crossing, where the American occupation forces are stationed, and all the way to the eastern shore of the Euphrates, where the Syrian Democratic Forces, led by the Kurdish militias, are in control of. So this was the, I hope this was beneficial and insightful for you guys. I really worked a lot today on this episode to bring to you some quality content to understand the dynamics of the region, the ideologies, who is on whose side and who is against whose side, and what shared interests all these parties have and what they disagree on, and all these things. And if you are liking this content, I would really appreciate it to do the easy thing, which is like this video, thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm thankful that this warning has vanished on this channel, and now we have all of a sudden 700 people watching this live. See, when they remove the warning and the suppression, things start blowing up again. So I'm really thankful for you guys for also doing lots of work to raise, to make a noise, you know, about the channel, and we caught the attention, let's say, of YouTube. And don't forget to hit the like, as our moderator in the live chat says, Red Access. Thank you so much, brother, for the moderation. And if you like to support, guys, this independent work I'm doing from my living room here, you can become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. If you don't like to use Patreon, there are different other means in the description below. I will see you tomorrow. Peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.